What I'm going to do here over the next few videos is a bit of a series on some of the equipment that I've been picking up recently for the homestead. We are off-grid, or I am off-grid. I don't know why I say we all the time. Habit. And so that means I do have a solar system. It's not very big, but just enough to give me some very simple basics. But there are some other pieces of equipment that I've purchased over the summer. And the main reason is that as I get older, it's going to be more and more difficult to just keep up with everything. Things gravity is changing and things seem to be heavier. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I'm going to say. And so I've picked up a tractor that's going to allow me to draw the logs out of the bush for firewood and for cutting and for any other reason that I want wood. I have my four-wheeler, of course, and a chainsaw and things like that that are just going to make life a little bit more doable, I guess is a word, that I can keep up with it for a longer period of time. So we're going to start off this video with one new piece of equipment that I have just got. Hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the channel. Well, to begin with, this is obviously about a mill, and I skinned some logs. I had about 5 yards of gravel delivered. I raked out a nice pad for it and started to stand the logs up. One of the first things the mill is going to do is make itself a lean-to shelter to protect it from the weather.
So we have the winch. The winch goes up to a pulley that's hooked up there. It's strapped to the tree. Just not quite as high as where the pulley is, as you can see. So when it lifts the tree up from level on the ground and it tips it all the way up, it can still lift it vertically enough to get that pan. And the pan is full of old engine oil and just a little bit of diesel because I didn't have very much. Normally I would mix it approximately half and half, but there's probably a good gallon of oil in there at least, and maybe a quart of diesel at the most. That's all I had. So I'm going to let that stand up there for a couple of days, and just like this post over here, which is now buried so you can't see it, the oil will travel up through the grain of the wood, and it'll come up well above where the actual oil level is. So it'll come up pretty high. And the longer I leave it, I see people leave it for an hour. It's probably better than nothing, but the longer I leave it, the more oil will soak in. And if I happen to be in the village at all, maybe I'll get another gallon of diesel and I could pour it in there and just mix it up a bit. So that's that job for a while. We'll just leave everything parked right where it is, and that can just stand there.
Even in the probably 30 or 40 minutes, you can see the oil is already traveling up higher than the level of the oil in the pan. We're going to use the winch, get the log lifted back up vertically in a day or two so I can get it out of there. The mill comes it's completely in pieces when you get it. So the first thing to do is to lay out some of the track and cut up some old railroad ties for bunks and start to get level and start to set up for putting the rails down. And this is an extremely tedious job. There's nothing particularly difficult about it in terms of technical work, but it has to be absolutely level lengthwise, and the tracks, initially you start out with them in two separate sides, and they're only joined together when you put the bunks on, so both sides have to be level lengthwise, because you don't want the thing rolling anywhere when you're not actually using it. Secondly, they have to be level with each other crosswise, and thirdly, they have to be exactly 26 inches to the outside edge of the track rails. Now these when I say exactly, I mean exactly. The groove in the wheels where it sits on top of the track is only slightly wider than the track itself. So by gosh, you certainly would never want this thing to jump off the track, because my goodness, that power head when it's assembled, and you'll see that shortly, it's easiest to assemble it on the skids on the ground, at least initially. But when you're done, the disadvantage of that is that it weighs about 400 pounds. So if it ever jumped off the track, you'd be done. So you'll see me here putting the feet on. Those feet are some of the adjusters that you can use to level the track up, and they're about every 2 feet, so there's quite a few of them. It gets tricky because the track is in a series of 6-foot lengths. So each length has to be joined, and they provide the hardware for that. But it has to be joined. The top rail where the wheels run has to be perfectly level. Again, these measurements are extremely accurate. If there's a bump where the 2 track sections join, even if it's only a 1/16 of an inch, that will cause the whole power head to bump that little 1/16 of an inch. And that means you're going to have a little 1/16 of an inch bump in the saw boards as you cut them. So, I mean, if you were using it for, just rough siding for a barn, I suppose that wouldn't matter. But I'm going to be using it for a lot of different things, possibly even furniture from some nice wood. So you really don't want that to happen. You want them to be perfectly level. Again, as soon as you can see me checking the level there, and you can also see that I'm kind of using the edge of the level to see if it catches the joint between the 2 tracks. As I said, that's absolutely got to be perfect. Then you check crossways. So you're leveling it not only lengthwise, but crossways, while keeping it exactly 26 inches to the outside edge of the track. And you just go back and forth. And as soon as you move 1 foot to make that particular section level, it changes the geometry of the other end of that section of track by a fraction of an inch. So if you need to raise it up, let's say a 1/16 of an inch to get the track level for the wheels, so using the bolts on those feet that I'm doing there right now, there are 2 bolts. One on the top is a lock bolt nut, and one on the bottom is the adjuster nut. As soon as I move that up in order to get that track level, now the other end is off slightly. And that means now I have to go and redo that because it's no longer level lengthwise. And then as soon as I do that, it's no longer level crosswise. So, it's just checking it and changing it and checking it and changing it. And it just goes on and on and on. This would be easier, and in the future when I move this thing, my intention is to have it on a trailer so that when I want to, I can take it down to the other property and use it to build a hunt shack, a hunt cabin. And so I won't have it on a trailer. So once you've got the trailer built, and I'll weld up my own trailer to fit the size of the rails and everything, if you make that trailer exactly square and level and true, then you won't have nearly the problem of leveling these up, because even though I rake that gravel up, it's certainly not perfectly level. I didn't have any way of doing it other than to drag a rake around it by hand. So, it's a long job. And again, it's just fussy. You just keep doing it. Once you've got that section of track as level and true as you can get it, that's when you start taking these green bunks that the logs actually sit on, and you start bolting them in crossways. And when you're doing that, keeping it level again, that's where you have to make sure that when you bolt them down tight, that track it maintains that 26-inch outside width. So almost level here, as you can see. And now the bunks are on, and they're in there finger tight, and I have to wiggle those around. They have to be not only level, but they have to be absolutely square to the sides of the track. So you're working now with a level and a square to get this thing, put it on right. I also got these big pickets. These are the pickets off of a logging trailer that hold the logs up on the trailer from rolling off. They're very big and very heavy, but they're going to make an awful nice sort of a loading ramp, so to speak, for the logs so that I can roll them up onto the deck of the trailer. I got several of these, and I think I'm going to take one of them and cut it up, and with some other material I'm going to weld up a boom to attach to the 3-point hitch of my tractor, and that way I can actually lift the logs up onto this loading ramp, or even just to get them out of the bush, and it'll keep them a lot cleaner, because one of the things that'll wipe out a saw blade to dullness so quick is dirt and grit that's in the bark usually of the tree when you start to saw it. So the cleaner the better. So we'll try and keep that real nice. And we got timber on the watch here. you might notice through the video that I'm kind of looking up and looking around once in a while. We've had a really big bear hanging around here lately. So here comes the beginning of the power head. It's out of the crate, and I've started to put it together. It's just step by step, and the book that comes with this is excellent, and it's a proper book. It's not just a bunch of sheets of paper stapled together. They did an excellent job of putting together an instruction manual, and it's properly done. So as you can see, I'm building the power head on that skid, and it's just easy because I can move all around it. I don't have to be stepping over the rails or anything. It's a real joy to be able to put the pieces on just on open level ground like that. But as I mentioned, the disadvantage is that once you've got it done, you now have to move a piece of equipment that weighs about 400 pounds. So this is how we do it. I had my buddy come in. I also have a 26-foot log pole that's going to be the top of the two posts that I put in the ground. It will be the top rail for the front of the shed. So here we are putting this together using that loader backhoe he's got, and I'll tell you what a treat that thing is. You just couldn't do it without it. That's tough going if you had to try to do this just by hand. As I was saying, I'm very impressed with the amount of thought and effort that was put into this mill. Not only in designing the mill as a machine, but the quality and the heaviness of the material. There's nothing cheap about this thing at all. Even to the point where they include strap hooks on the top of it, built right into the framework, where you can lift it. And that was a godsend because, as I said, with the weight of it, we used the bucket of the loader, and we're able to strap the power head to that and then lift it right up onto the track and just set it down. It was just a breeze. There were a whole lot of other things too. I wanted to cup the top of the uprights. I didn't want a round top beam on a flat top post because it's just not stable. So I had to ride up in the elevator here with the chainsaw. I was able to put a nice sort of cup into the top of these posts, and that makes it nice for the log to sit in. Even with the anchor bolts, even though it's well anchored, a flat top and a round post just isn't going to be as stable as it should be. So this was a real good thing. These machines, boy, I'll tell you that these loaders, and especially the backhoe portion of it, they're just the greatest thing to have around. I'm lucky I have a best friend who's got this one, so it just makes life so much easier when you've got things to do. That's just a great piece of machinery too. It seems that just about everything in this entire project was a matter of doing it and rechecking it and doing it and moving it and doing it again. So we've moved over to the far post now, and going back up to make the same kind of a cup notch on the top of it as I just did on the first end here. These poles are 18 feet apart, and the reason is that I have to be able to fit a 16-foot log, which is the maximum that the mill can take. And I need a little bit of clearance to be able to get the log onto the track, onto the bunk of the machine, of the mill. So the poles are 18 feet across, which is why I needed such a big top rail. So that top front beam is an 8-inch tree, and it's pretty heavy in itself. So again, that's going to be another real good use for this bucket coming up here. You'll see that shortly. And it's about the only way. I know I'm also going to do a timber frame sort of technique and put wind braces on it and so on. It's still a long span though, and there'll be some rafters on there, of course, and it's going to have I think I'm going to do a wood shake top on it. So it won't be particularly heavy, but in my area, snow load is something that you really have to take into consideration. So here we are. We're going to lift this big log up and set it on the edge of the bucket. The bucket is on there because it was easier for me to stand on to do the cutting and the fitting. But for the log part here, forks, we should have brought the forks as well, but we didn't. So the log sits on the edge of the bucket like that, but it's not very secure, so we had to chain it in place to make absolutely certain that there were no accidents, because if it ever fell on you, I mean, that thing weighs, I don't know what it weighs, but a whole lot more than you'd ever want to have it coming down at you. Because it's attached firmly to the bucket, we have to keep moving the whole machine around a little bit to get it to line up with the posts. Normally, if it was on a sling, we could get one end on one post, and then by hand we could just swing it back and forth just a little bit to line it up with the other post. But that's not an option here because it's fixed firmly to the bucket. So it was, all these things just, it's not hard, but it just takes time. So now that my friend is up there unchaining the log so that we can drop the bucket away, I'm up there right after that, and I've drilled holes through the log and into the posts, and I've forged some rebar into giant nails about 14 or 16 inches long, and they go right through that log and deep into the post. So along with the little cup for the log, a cup shape that the logs sit in, that's going to be pretty darn secure. That's just now you can see the little square notch there, and it's not flat level. Those are all along that post there, that log, and those are where the rafters are going to sit in there, and they will also likewise be spiked into that top post. All set and ready to go. I just have to put some oil in the engine, and that'll be it. It's ready to fire up and give it a try. What I'll do is run it for about an hour, and then when I've done a few cuts and just made sure everything's working well, I've already done all the setup on it, but I'll stop it at the end of about an hour, change the oil in the engine. Sometimes when they manufacture them, there's little bits of grit and so on from the machining processes. Usually they're pretty good about cleaning that out, but I always like to do an oil flush right off the bat. So I'll get about an hour's running time on it, flush the oil out, put new oil in again, and that'll be it. We'll be ready to go. And at that time, I'll also recheck all the settings. It's going to settle. It's brand new. It's never been run, so it's going to settle a little bit. The belts will have that initial break-in stretch, if you want to call it. It won't be much, but there'll be some. So those things will be rechecked. The blade leveling to the bunks will be rechecked, and then it's time to get busy. So that's the end of the video for this, and the next time you see it, we'll go on with a few other topics in the meantime, but the next time you see it, it will have had some running time on it, and I'll be able to give a little bit better impression of what I think of how it's working and performing. And then probably in the spring and the summer next year, when I've had a fair bit of running time on it, I'll be able to give another opinion as to sort of a long-term impression. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see y'all soon.